Welcome back to the Billy Bat story. Today we're covering chapters 62 through 93, which broadly make up the Komori Village arc. If you missed part 1, there's a link to it on your left here. I'd recommend watching that first because part 1 happens before part 2, who would have thought. So, Komori Village. This arc jumps backwards and forwards all over the place. To make it a bit easier for the sake of video, we're going to be breaking the chapters into their respective stories. This means that we'll be following the characters on their story, then jumping back to pick up with other stories that we're running concurrently. These stories will be the main cast, DeVivi's story, we'll meet him soon, Zofu history story, and then the bits and pieces about Chuck Culkin that go on throughout the chapters. Eventually these stories converge, so until then, I'll be trying to keep things understandable. I'm also cutting the interim discussions on this one. So that'll be all the preamble, let's crack in. We pick up right where we left off. Kevin visits the Goodmans' home after events have settled down. The Goodmans offer him a trip back to Japan in recompense for saving their son. Kevin has already been getting messages from the Bat to go there too. While at the house, he meets with the younger Kevin once again. Young Kevin is spending his time drawing Billy Bat comics, though these include pretty graphic depictions of the assassination. Young Kevin says that the Bat will make him go to Japan if older Kevin doesn't. Cut to Jackie, who's scared that she's going to be silenced over the JFK assassination. She's studying history and her school encourages her to go to her ancestral home in Aiga to research the story of Kanbei and Yajiro. Kurusu is also snooping around her family at the same time. And then it turns out they win a contest for a trip to Japan. Convenient. Kevin receives a letter from Agent Smith. It details Kurusu and Finney are still hunting the scroll. Smith himself is heading to Japan to do the same thing, and he encourages Kevin to go too. We learn there are assassins after Kevin, tasked with cleaning up the Kennedy conspiracy. Kevin takes the Goodwins up on their offer and flies to Japan, with Jackie on the same flight. Jackie approaches him on the flight and talks about Lee Harvey Oswald. They get separated again, but now they both know about each other's connection to the Bat. After landing, they go to their separate hotels. Jackie sees a map and remembers the one that the Bat gave her in the last arc. The X is pointing to Komori Village, her ancestral home, where she wants to go. Meanwhile, Kevin is being told that his master is in trouble, although it seems like the Bat is struggling to contact him. Jackie tracks down Kevin's hotel and they share their stories. They unite their goals and they head to Aiga. Their plan is to find the scroll and rescue Zofu. Cut to a simultaneously happening story. Osaka 1964. We're introduced to a Henry Charles DeVivi. He's in the employ of TV Chuck and is tasked with buying land for a new Billy Land amusement park. This world's Disneyland, so to speak. The land he wants to buy is over Komori Village, the final resting place of the original Momochi Scroll. It also happens to be the land the Japanese railroad were looking to purchase years before. DeVivi heads to the village to attempt to buy it from the town mayor. The mayor refuses to sell the land and is later found hung from a tree. At the funeral, the town elder arrives, and DeVivi goes to try and buy the land from him. He reveals he's looking for the scroll, and the elder puts 2 and 2 together over the mayor's death. The next day, the villagers find the elder dead in the river. DeVivi then goes to the deputy mayor. We see him hang this man who can't sell him the town, but he does guide DeVivi to who can, a hermit on the edge of town. Who could this hermit be but our old friend Zofu, the original Billy Bat artist? Zofu has been drawing with his companion Yamashita in this hermitage on the edge of town. Zofu learns about the trouble and sends Yamashita away with a new prophecy comic. He is told to find Kevin Yamagata and deliver it to him. Yamashita leaves and Zofu attempts to flee as well, but he runs into DeVivi. DeVivi clears out Zofu's hut of all the comics he's made. DeVivi is erasing every other form of Billy Bat around the world. He finds any comic even slightly close to Chuck Culkin's Billy Bat, kills the author and burns the work. Hanging Zofu, he asks him for the scroll. Zofu says if DeVivi tries to kill him, Zofu will call his master back in time to go and kill DeVivi's parents. He refuses to give up the location of the scroll. Zofu continues his talk of time travel. He talks about DeVivi's parents by name to back up his threat. With his attacker offset, Zofu gets DeVivi to lower the noose momentarily. Taking the opportunity, Zofu escapes. The gang look to hire a cab to get to the village, but there's no drivers available. They decide to shelter for the night until Yamashita finds them. The script is delivered and they renew their search for a way to the village. They find an available car and Randy sets to drive them all there. Driving on the way, they see the road is littered with holes. The entire village has been dug through. Further in the village, they see mud-caked people swarming out from these holes. They flee into town and they try to look for normal people, but what they find is DeVivi hung up inside. Kevin quickly cuts Devivi down despite Yamashita's protests. They quickly hide as the mud-caked people stumble into the room. Not finding anyone, the people leave. Then Kevin starts questioning Devivi. Devivi states that the townsfolk did this after going crazy while looking for the scroll. Kevin sees it as a lie. Devivi continues that the bat is a demon and they all need to band together to prevent Zofu from using the scroll to change history. They still don't trust him, so they prepare to leave, untying Devivi's legs so he can leave but not cause trouble. Kevin draws Billy for directions, but Billy won't look at them, so he's no help at all. On the way to the hut, Kevin reads Zofu's new manuscript. It suggests that the scrolls are hidden underneath the Buddhas. Getting to the hut, they check the Buddhas, but they've already been dug up. Devivi reveals that he could have escaped any time but held off, hoping that they would lead him to the scroll. Devivi frees himself and quickly takes Jackie as a hostage. Kevin and Randy tie themselves up. Devivi questions Kevin if he can actually talk to the bat, when Randy steps forward as someone who can. We'd seen him talking to Billy in the taxi earlier, but none of the other characters know this yet. He's also been talking to the Chuck Culkin Billy Bat, which no one else in the story has ever done. Billy says to read Zofu's manga for the location of the scroll, but Devivi has already burned everything in the hut. Kevin suggests that he could rewrite it, and Devivi lets him out to get to work. Now, stay with me here because we're about to do some Inception stuff and go down a few layers in the story. We're going to start by going to 1920 for Zofu's history. It's 1920 and Zofu is a young man. He's telling stories and sharing his prophecy comics. The bat was already talking to him at this time. These stories show Japan in a post-war depression, and so he promptly gets put in prison for anti-Japanese propaganda. He meets his new cellmate, and it turns out this man is the previous Billy Bat author. The cellmate shows a prophecy of Zofu's hanging by Devivi. The cellmate says, at that time, Zofu should use the power of the scroll to tell him to kill Devivi's parents. It's 1922. Zofu runs into Albert Einstein signing autographs. He gets his attention by showing him a picture of the bat. Einstein pulls him aside and quickly lectures him about the dangers of time travel and parallel world theories. He explains that, in this story at least, parallel worlds exist, or they existed. They were all destroyed apart from one, which is the current reality this story is set in. Los Angeles, 1924. We meet Detective Gary Devivi. He's a big shot investigator looking at a string of murders by the notorious Japanese killer. Each victim is Japanese and each was found lying next to a picture of the bat. We learn that Gary has taken an interest in a corner flower cellar as well. Another murder, another bat sign on the scene. That evening, he looks at his flower cellar but sees that she left her flowers out on the sidewalk. Fearing the worst, Gary rushes outside and finds the flower cellar recently attacked. This is Gary and Sissy. Devivi's parents officially meet. We see Zofu's master is here too. He's drawing a bat next to the bodies and awaiting a sign from the future. Another murder, another bat sign at the scene. Gary figures out a pattern to the days the killer is killing on, but to no success, more Japanese die. Still, no sign from Zofu. Time passes and Gary and Sissy get married. Gary shares to his wife his history, how his father ran off with a Japanese prostitute and left the family, how he walked into the streets looking for his father but never found him. One morning, Gary has left the house early and Sissy wakes to find Zofu's master, we'll call him Shisho from now on, in the room with her. Shisho tells Sissy that he's waiting for the bat to speak to him, and when it does, he'll kill her husband. But it turns out he's already too late. Sissy's pregnant and he'll have to kill both of them. Shisho hands her a prophecy comic he drew of the future and leaves. The comic shows Sissy's son killing the people of Komori Village while singing a family lullaby only Sissy should know. Sissy hides the comic, but then finds a blood-stained Japanese katana hiding in their family home. One night she decides to follow her husband as he leaves the house, noticing that the katana is missing. In a secluded place, she sees him cut a Japanese man down, revealing himself as the Japanese killer. Shisho stops her from intervening. He has been drawing the bat at each murder site, waiting for the order to kill Gary and to let the real killer know that he's being watched. This time was the straw that broke the camel's back, however, and Shisho resolves to kill Gary regardless of news from the future. Sissy wonders if there's a way to talk to her future son from the past and tell him that she's disappointed. She asks Shisho to draw a comic of the future she wants for her child. Later, Shisho tries to draw it, but what he ends up with is a comic of Sissy revealing Gary as the killer to the police chief. It's a prophecy comic showing Gary watching this encounter, so Shisho runs to keep her safe. Gary is looking to tie up loose ends and he ends up killing the police chief. Now he's coming after Sissy. Shisho gets to her first and tells her to go to his comic. He's written the new future for her child. Shisho fights Gary to give her the time to escape, and in the end, they go out killing each other. It's 1924. Zofu's making his way to LA to meet his master. On the way, he runs into none other than Kevin Yamagata's dad and a baby Kevin. Getting to LA, Zofu can't find Shisho, but Sissy finds him. Zofu learns Shisho was killed and the police painted him as the Japanese killer to save face for them and for Sissy's child. Now we're back to the main story. The start of Kevin's new comic shows Shisho's original, but Sissy shows up, singing the lullaby once again. Comic Sissy pleads for her son not to be the evil man he's turned into. DeVivi gets angry at this, calling Kevin's Billy a fake that he should have disposed of already. He says Chuck's Billy must be real if Randy can speak to it. Randy tells him to check underneath the eyes, and in doing so, removes the top sticker, revealing the real Billy Bat, Kevin's Billy Bat, underneath. Just then, Yamashita busts in and saves the whole crew. Kevin keeps drawing though, he's choosing his comic over learning the true nature of the bat despite being tempted again and again. He finishes it and hands it to DeVivi. DeVivi reads the comic, breaks down, and for the first time he meets the real Billy Bat. Naturally, he's scared out of his mind, so he flees, only seeing a vision of a man wreathed in bats. His flight leads him right over an edge, and he falls. Back in town, we see two of Finney's goons pulling guns out. They've arrived hunting the scroll. Meanwhile, the villagers who have been digging through the town have actually found it. The main cast return to town as well, unable to find any sign of DeVivi after the fall. Kevin is finally given the scroll and their journey is at an end. More goons are seen surrounding the town. Unfurling the scroll, it essentially is an instruction sheet for drawing Billy Bat. Further down the scroll, it also shows various drawings, most of which we don't recognize apart from this circle. It's the moon. There is also a map on the scroll marking Basque Spain, hometown of Francisco Javier, the missionary called to be the carrier from the earlier arcs. Now Kevin has a new mission to investigate this lead. He thanks Jackie for all the help, but has to say goodbye to her, not wanting to put her in any more danger. Then one of Kurusu's goons enters town. Finney, not wanting to lose the scroll, orders his boys to do a reset, set things back to their starting point. So the bullets start flying, and Kevin Yamagata is shot. Cut to America 1981. A young child is saved from a passing car and we see the hero who saved him, the man who was wreathed in bats in DeVivi's vision, a grown-up Kevin Goodman. So that is the end of the main plot for this arc. There are a couple of side stories that were going on at the same time, so we'll quickly cover those as well. Arizona 1964. We meet director Akichi. He's a master of special effects being hired by Chuck Culkin Enterprises to film a certain movie. That movie is the moon landing. The US Army is faking the moon landing to assert dominance and win the hearts and minds of the world. They plan on using Chuck Culkin's company as an arm of their own army, the military to control the land and the media to control the minds. Back in LA, the two Chucks are talking about the latest Billy Bat comic. Real Chuck plans to use time travel in the story and explains how it'll work. He describes time travel as access to another dimension. Someone who controls a fourth dimension would be like us being challenged by 2D soldiers. They would be powerful beyond comprehension. TV Chuck meets with Finney, and it turns out Finney wasn't looking for the scroll on Chuck's orders. Chuck shouldn't have known about the scroll at all. Finney's organization was supporting Chuck's rise in entertainment, provided that they would get control of the scroll. Finney presses how Chuck learned the password to the scroll. Billy Bat, Billy Bat, Billy Billy Bat, grant my wish, Billy Bat. Chuck laughs it off, but Finney says that this is the password confirmed by Albert Einstein himself. And that's going to end the Komori Village arc. Hopefully you followed me along through that, especially through the Japanese killer and the Zofu history arcs. As it goes in the manga, it kind of dips out and in between the current storyline and the previous storyline, and then going forwards and backwards in time, and it's fantastic to read, but very hard to translate into a video, so hopefully this sort of layout made a bit more sense for you. And that just about wraps us up. So where we're going from here is next video we'll be covering the Golden Age arc, which is where we meet our boy, Kevin Goodman, who is an absolute champ and is one of the best parts of this entire manga. Prepare yourself for some big changes as we jump in time and into a new main character and to a bunch of new things going on, but it is really interesting and does pick up on a lot of these threads that have already been laid down. Until then, thanks for watching. This has been CG, and I'll see you Gs in the next one.